post-game after Game 4, Eastern Conference semifinals. The New York Knicks lose 2 in South Beach. Game 4 is in the books. Your boy CT with EJ here to chop this thing up, shout you out, get our thoughts out here. Knicks Nation, we here for one another, but we got lots to talk about. We'll be talking about what went wrong, what do the New York Knicks need to do, is this series done for, all of those things. We'll get EJ's thoughts, and we'll look ahead to Game 5 and adjustments, constructive, negative, positive, all the thoughts to talk about from tonight's loss. EJ, brother, how we feeling?
It's gonna take me a minute. It's gonna take me a minute. This was a difficult game to stomach. I know if you're a true Knicks fan, if you're a true orange and blue fan, as much as we were hyped to shut down 7th Avenue, as much as we were hyped to go down to Madison Square Garden and to close down all of the blocks around Madison Square Garden, you know, the Bing Bong guy was out, you know, everybody was losing their minds. We had our boy Jay Boogie with the new anthem that went up for this playoff series. This is the kind of loss that, you know, it's difficult because it's the kind of difficult loss that you have where, you know, if you have loved ones in the house, you love them, but, you know, you're going to take a step, you might go for a little bit of a walk. It's the kind of loss where, you know, you go to work the next day and you don't have as much energy, you're just sitting there frustrated. This is the kind of loss where you're already thinking to yourself, okay, what kind of player can we trade for in the off season? This was a difficult loss for so many different reasons, and it really is something that, you know, I was walking around my place just in it. So shout out to all the Knicks Buzz fans, shout out to the community, shout out to the chat. We're here for each other today because it's going to be a difficult one. What do you think, CT?
Apologies. We're definitely going to give our broader perspective on the series, and then looking ahead to Game 5, and then obviously touching briefly on you know, the future of the organization, right, as we get closer to this season ending, down in a huge hole, 3-1 down. Game 5 at MSG, of course, but yeah, I don't blame anyone for their thoughts, frustrations on certain players. Thibs, the way they played, was a very, very frustrating game overall. It's been a very, very frustrating series. So it ain't just people's thoughts on tonight. It's been culminating, you know, a struggle in Game 2, even though we won. But yeah, players just not executing all of their flaws like they do in the playoffs, coming to a head. Discombobulating is the word I'm going to use, like Clyde.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll talk about it from the beginning. So wire to wire, fam, the Knicks came out 30-31, showed more fight, showed more hustle in the first quarter. Of course, it was a costly second quarter. The Miami Heat 25-18, 33-34 in the third. New York Knicks rallied back and forth. A lot of frustrations, a lot of missed calls, a lot of blown turnovers. And then the fourth quarter, the New York Knicks won 20-19. You know, the Heat just seemed to hit timely shots when they needed to, when the New York Knicks were were making a run, EJ. But of course, the follies of Randle, the fouls, the inability to get some rebounds, Mitchell Robinson also turning the ball over. There was just everyone tonight. We lost as a team. You know, help me pinpoint in terms of who's at the top of the list in terms of didn't show up tonight.
First things first, I want to shout out. I'm forgetting who exactly it was in the chat, but I think it was Franklin. I might be wrong about the exact name, But going back to game two, there was a debate in the chat as to how we should have felt about the game two win. Was it a win in terms of looking forward and we should look forward to promising things for the rest of the series? Or were there things that we should be concerned about because of the manner in which there was some questionable decision making, there was some questionable decision making, there was some
Mm.
sloppy play, and I really want to give credit to the person who chatted that in the chat. I think it was definitely Franklin, but I might be forgetting. If you're here tonight, just please say it was you because I'll remember the name as soon as I see it, but I want to shout you out. The reason why I wanted to bring that up is because on so many fronts, there were so many moments where the Knicks lost the game, not at the end of the fourth quarter, but in little moments, whether it was not staying on your feet. So that was, Quentin Grimes a couple of times where, all it took was a pump fake and he was up in the third row of the arena because he got pump fake to oblivion. It was, Julius Randle, who I don't want to be the guy like who's making him a target, but there were moments where you could just see him not closing out with a sense of urgency. Same thing with RJ Barrett. There seemed to be that energy when it came to getting the ball and scoring, but in terms of closing out, making sure to like stay in front of his man, that level of energy and concentration just didn't seem to be there. And with all due fairness, and with all due respect, I do understand that it looked like he turned his ankle at some point early in the first quarter. And I texted CT and I said, it looks like he's a little bit hurt, but that energy has to be matched on both sides of the ball. Um, and when you're playing against a Miami Heat team that really plays very well and doesn't seem to get rattled, you can't give up on plays. And I felt like there were easily 7 or 8 or 9 different plays where the Knicks made mental mistakes that shows that basketball, and it perfectly demonstrates that basketball is not just a physical sport, it's a game of intelligence and it's a game of perseverance. And while I think that, we can have the conversation in terms of which squad is better in terms of talent, tonight it was really proven that the Knicks weren't the more intelligent team. They weren't the more disciplined team. They weren't the more cohesive team. And all three of those facets, every player has to look himself in the mirror and say, how did I fail this team tonight? Because I wasn't intelligent. I wasn't cohesive, nor was I perseverant. I didn't persevere in those moments where I could have taken an extra step to go for a loose ball. I could have, tried to block out my man. I mean, how many times does Kyle Lowry
Man.
beat you to a rebound? Kyle Lowry. There are
Mm.
lots of things that Kyle Lowry could beat you to,
Facts. Preach.
and a rebound is not one of them. I'm gonna stay right there, but y'all can fill in the jokes if you want to. I just gave you the setup for the punchline. You can fill in the rest. But to me, this loss is on everyone, and I think this is. Um, I could go off the next 20 minutes and just shout people out, but I try to be a good guy, and this was just a very frustrating loss.
Yeah, as we go through the game, we will, things will creep up in our minds. But it was a lot to unpack because, firstly, I'll say, man, this is a game the New York Knicks absolutely had a great chance to win. I mean, we were in it with 3.5 minutes to go after all those follies. So first and foremost, I felt the Knicks had the Miami Heat's defense may have been the worst this game, or the New York Knicks offense stepped up a little bit um, at times in the game. And we'll talk about it in my adjustments for Game 5. But
Yeah,
RJ Barrett was able to get switched. They recognized was aggressive still. Quentin Grimes, that was a positive. Came into the starting unit, hit a couple threes early, and gave more spacing. Tonight there was more spacing for the New York Knicks. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't a good game from Jalen Brunson necessarily, and it wasn't a good game from Julius Randle. when we needed them the most. I think obviously Jalen Brunson tried a heck of a lot more in terms of effort. I think both of them
Mm.
are obviously dealing with a lot. Both of them are banged up. Julius Randle, particularly, we know he doesn't give a max effort anyway, but he definitely was not moving. Definitely was not moving well. I mean, Kevin Love burning him off the dribble. Um, Bam beating him off the dribble. Caleb Martin blowing people off the dribble for the dunk. Um, by the way, I ain't mad that Quentin Grimes went up for the slam, tried to go up for the slam. That's what you want to see from a young player. Um, it was a horrific moment of the game, but I'll get that out of the way. I'm actually okay that Quentin Grimes tried to get up and slam that one. Um, but I want to start with also giving credit to the Heat because again and again, every time we show a glimmer of getting on a run, a glimmer of executing well, hitting a few shots, in a possibility of taking some momentum, the Heat execute, they keep their poise. Like I put in the title of the show, the Knicks lack poise. Right. I don't think we could say the Knicks roster versus the Heat roster without Tyler Hero is, one's
Oh,
necessarily
well,
much better than the other. It's who can execute, who's coached well, which players know their role well,
yeah.
and who can hold their nerve. EJ, the Heat take away what we do well, which is penetration. In my notes, and I take that as a big compliment because then they know the New York Knicks are elite at getting to the rim, and all series they've taken that away, and they've made
Yeah.
us beat them with quick ball movement, which we've never
Yeah.
been good at all season, and they've
Quick
made
decision
us try to
making.
beat them with our jump shooting, which we've never really been a great shooting team. But tonight we actually shot the ball fairly well.
It's funny you should say that because there were so many aspects of this game
Hmm.
where we were set up for success. But I think I'm going to try to rationalize why so many of us are frustrated tonight. The same ways we were set up for success tonight are, in many respects, the same ways in which are the same reasons why we lost. So, for example, um,
Hmm.
Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo not being available, for many of us, we licked our fingers saying, okay, barbecue chicken, particularly losing Tyler Hero. When we looked at the Miami Heat roster, we're like, there's no way an aged Kevin Love can be such a disruptor. There's no way a Kyle Lowry at this point in his career could be that much of a disruptor. There's no way a Caleb Martin or a Gabe Vincent
Hmm.
can have such a bearing on this series. And then as I was texting you today during the game, and John Schmelk and I were talking about this. Miami has such a fascinating basketball culture because it's the start of the game, and that arena was still not full. And so you have a bunch of transplant New Yorkers in the arena, and that arena wasn't full yet. And as I texted to CT, I'm like, listen, it's not going to be until the start of the second quarter that the arena is going to be full, and you're going to see all the white shirts because they're going to white out. And then the other part of it too is that if you're a Knicks fan, the reason why this game hurts so much is because you probably have a Miami Heat fan in your life. Mine is my cousin Carl, and I know he's probably watching right now, and he's throwing shade, and it's obnoxious and it's annoying. But thank you for watching, Knicks Buzz. We appreciate you. But the Knicks and the Heat have such a long history that this kind of loss, where it comes down to intelligence, where it comes down to poise, when it comes down to discipline, all of those things, all of those mental lapses, they accumulate. And the other thing that I know that you probably noticed too, CT, is that when those mental lapses started mounting, you could start seeing them play at times quite tentatively. You could see, like for example, RJ over dribble, and you could see Julius want to revert back to the spin and Rooney, or the Randall the Julius cycle, or the Randall cycle, or the Randall handle, whichever one you want to call it. And all of those things just it just became a monsoon where you become frustrated because the game was within our grasp. In as much as we played an imperfect game, the game was still in our grasp, which meant that the series was in our grasp, and we just couldn't deliver.
Yeah, definitely, man. Bit of perspective from me. Winning games on the road in the playoffs is I think a lot. I've found a lot of people underestimate that the the toughness of winning a game on the road. I think if the Knicks don't come out and lose game one like you're supposed to hold serve. So yeah, if we lose this series, which we more than likely are going to lose, we're not the better team. But I look at game one more than anything because it's like tennis. You got to hold serve. You just got to take care of what you can at MSG, and our lack of experience in game one definitely hurt. Now tonight we showed some fight. Over the course of the game, you know, a lot of inexperience and follies and issues during the game. We're definitely getting out coached. Uh, some notes I got in terms of not just tonight, but in the broader series. The Heat player sharper are more connected. Our players are not connected. You see miscommunication. Some guys don't know where to be. I guess so. Does the organization need to look at more intelligent players? You know, higher IQ, guys that don't get disturbed in the moment, guys that can keep focus. So that's another thing. Everyone want to keep saying Miami picks up these undrafted guys. Well, it don't matter if you're drafted, undrafted. If you've got good IQ, you can find yourself in the league. So yeah, Heat play sharper and more connected. The second thing is Heat have the best player in this series as well.
Mhm.
No one pulls more gravity than Jimmy Butler, which puts all of your other teammates in better positions to succeed. There's a reason why Kyle Lowry can bob up, Max Strauss, Duncan Robinson can play his role. It's because Jimmy Butler, we're borderline paranoid every time he cuts or he does something, and he also does get a cheap whistle. The other thing I got is Heat can win multiple ways, right? They got outside shooting. They got an inside presence, Bam Adebayo. They can play inside out. We have a couple big men, but they're rim protectors. That's it. We
Yeah,
we can't play inside out. We're just
yeah,
get to the cup and we're jump shooting.
yeah. That's
Another
a big
question I
point.
want to throw to you,
That's a
EJ, is are
big point.
we playing 4v5 with Mitchell Robinson on the floor?
You stole the words right out of my mouth, bro. I
Have
it
at it.
there was a point I believe in the third quarter where what you just said was one of my realizations was that if if Mitchell Robinson can't be a rebounding monster or rebounding threat, it sort of eliminates the very
Yep.
positives he brings to the game,
Yep.
and all of a sudden he becomes a net negative on both ends of the court
Yep.
because he's not much then of a offensive threat because his offensive range is limited to his offensive rebounding. And there was definitely a play in the third quarter where Mitchell Robinson started to post up, and Jalen Robinson was at the top of the key, moving to his left, and he made eye contact with Mitchell Robinson, but then he looked him off because he realized there's nothing much I can do with you in this moment, and anything I were to try to do with you would probably result in a negative play. And because we're playing from behind right now, we can't utilize you in any way, shape, or form, even to touch the ball, even to have you to pass off to the next man. And so this is one of, as much as we were lauding Mitchell Robinson and his defensive tenacity and his offensive rebounding in the Cavs series, this is where his offensive limitations are vastly exposed to the point where it allows for, at times you could see the Heat players packing the paint once a ball goes up in the air, and we're not able to get second and third opportunities. And so, yeah, we're playing 4-on-5 on offense. And when you don't necessarily have creative, highly
Mhm.
creative players who can manage that limitation playing 4-on-5 and not be so ISO reliant, with a smart basketball team like the Heat, who are able to rotate and who are committed to who are committed to
Mm.
defense. No wonder we have so many spurts where it becomes an offensive struggle. It becomes a nightmare to try to put points into the basket. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the conundrum we face. The Heat exposed,
Yeah.
they've exposed that for many of our offensive players, it's 4-on-5 with lots of ISO heavy decision making and an inability to really create a cohesive offensive flow once an ISO opportunity breaks down.
Yeah. You hit the nail, man. Also, I want to add this too. As we all know, man, in the playoffs, the flaws get under the microscope. They get exposed. Your flaws. The Cleveland Cavaliers were a 50-plus win team, had a great season, and we exposed them in 5 games. And what we did to them is basically what's being done to us, man. Um, in terms of us, you know, just doing it to them. Um, EJ. Yeah. Um, yeah. So the Cavs, basically what the Knicks did to the Cavs is what being done
Yeah,
to us, being
absolutely.
exposed with our flaws. Also, the Heat players are rising up to the challenge, I will say. If everything's a level playing field, they're rising up. Their role players are playing better. Our role players aren't even playing the same. They're playing worse.
Yeah,
So a bit of inexperience, being shook. Um, And in the playoffs, you don't have time to figure things out.
no, no,
You
no,
have to be ready. If you're either ready or you're not, you're going to get found out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then I mentioned the road games being the factor again. This series could easily be 2-2 if our hustle. Like, let me ask you, EJ, if we brought the same hustle we did tonight in game one, do you think there's more likeliness we win game one?
I think the hustle component should be. Listen, I grew up listening to sports radio. Hustle is a non-negotiable. Kyle Lowry should not be beating any of your bigs, anyone in your front court to a rebound. There are literal plays where you see 5 players whose will has, you know, the, during the Cleveland series, I talked about how you could see moments where the Cleveland Cavaliers they lost their will to play. There were moments tonight where you could see that in our players, where you can see them not having the ability to will themselves to a loose ball. You could see that there were moments where, you know, our players were hoping and praying and wishing that the refs would save this game for them. Listen, when you're playing basketball, you're not only playing your defender, you're playing the opposing crowd, you're playing the opposing arena, you're playing the opposing head coach, you're playing yourself as well too, and you're playing the refs. And in almost every versus, whether the Knicks were versing the opposing players, they lost. When the Knicks were playing against the refs, they lost. When they played against the opposing crowd, they lost. And even when they were playing against themselves, in terms of having the will to tell themselves, my legs are tired, my ankle is hurting right now. I know that the refs have made blown a few calls, but I'm gonna will myself, despite myself saying I'm too tired to do it. I'm gonna will myself to get to that loose ball. They lost that game too. So the game within the game within the game within the game, they lost every single game. And so if you don't have it game 4, it's hard to envision yourself finding it for 3 successive games
Yeah.
in a row.
Yeah, there's not much you can change. I know people keep going on about adjustments and that. And after game one, if you lose your home court, there can be doubt creep in that,
Yeah.
hey, we just don't match up well against these guys. And I keep mentioning the 4v5 with Mitch in terms of not blaming him on the loss for the series or
Hmm.
anything, but that's a structural flaw in our roster in terms of the Heat able to play 5 out
Yeah.
and us, we cannot play 5 out. There's a lot of pressure in the playoffs. If you can't drain shots, the defense can creep in on everyone else. And Mitchell Robinson had quite a number of turnovers. Keeps bringing the ball down, gets stripped, or travels, or misses both free throws.
Oh,
Those were momentum killing
yeah.
tonight. just as many as Randle did. Mitchell Robinson had the worst timely momentum killing turnovers that killed us. Not even able to split free throws at this point. Yet he's clamoring about a bigger role, wanting a bigger role in the offense. I mean, we're lucky they don't hack him more.
Yeah.
So in terms of the stats, the Knicks shot pretty solid, 48% from the field. Were shooting the three ball well at one point, but ended up with 32%. But the rebounding, man, we got out rebounded 44-35. EJ.
Yeah.
We got out assisted 28-21.
That makes perfect sense, though. I mean, it's just it's so ISO heavy that when the ISO breaks down, it's who can bail out, who can bail you out, who can improvise and create a shot out of nothing, or look for refs to bail you out. Whereas you can see on so many plays, Miami systematically passing in ways where it's deconstructing the Knicks defense. And, anytime that there was a little bit of a surge, anytime there was a little bit of a push, there was a backbreaker play, there was a backbreaker shot. And I'll tell you, the one that to me, where I texted and I said game is over, was really in the third quarter, I believe, when the Heat had almost 2 minutes of possession time. I mean, it wasn't necessarily 2 minutes, but it amounted to almost 90 seconds of possession time in the Knicks half court. You can't win. You can't win that way. You can't win. It's like in hockey. Like, listen, if you watch any hockey, when when the team has the puck in your end for 90 seconds, I've watched enough hockey to know you're about to get scored on. No matter how great your goalie is, you're going to get tired. You're not going to have the same legs. You're looking to get shifted out. That's what happened to the Knicks. You can just see their will just be sapped out. And, and no, like, I don't think that, anyone disrespected the Heat. I definitely don't think that. Sometimes when you look at the complexity of basketball, you just have to understand that players can sometimes beat themselves too. It's not just about, this is not 2K. This is not like, you match up a player's ratings versus another team's ratings. This is about the other aspects of the game: intelligence, team cohesion, team intelligence, gang rebounding. So it's not talent versus talent. It's all those other elements as well too. And I don't think anyone disrespected the talent on the Heat. It's just that the Heat are exposing what the Knicks are missing, not necessarily in terms of athleticism or ability to make shots. It's about the other components of the game.
Definitely. The Heat can win multiple ways, and I keep saying that before, inside out. And Jimmy, and also Bam, like, in terms of the accolades, Bam can shoot the mid range. He's a big man who's all defensive player, and Jimmy's that all star, MVP type candidate, and their role players are stepping up. So where did it go wrong? Ultimately for the Knicks is a lot of our role players were not getting the same production we were throughout the regular season. We continue to rely heavily on those few. Obi Toppin, in terms of being a vital contributor in the regular season, he was probably the worst role player tonight. Disappointing, because coming into these playoffs, he had some moments, EJ, in the Cavs series, but Obi was just a complete net loss tonight. Turning it over, airballing, and then you look at guys on the Heat, like they can't miss. Like how are you going to beat a team when your role players are shook and can't give you any production, and then the other team's role players are swishing.
And also, like, the other thing is too is that we already know that Tom Thibodeau shortens his rotation during the playoffs. I mean, he had already started to shorten his rotations by the time we had gotten into like game one, and we had started seeing minutes for players like IQ and for Obi decline precipitously. And we know that Obi is a player that who seems to, I shouldn't say who's definitely, but seems to, he's an energy guy. And when he doesn't feel that sense of energy, I don't know if he's able to break himself out of the quicksand of the psychology of the game. And you could see when he was benched, there was a level of frustration there that, I don't even think we saw him in the second half. And I wonder why. I mean, there's little, there are so many, I mean, this game was lost by so many different factors and players, Obi being just one of them. This was just a total meltdown. I mean, there's not much that could be said about it.
Yeah, so coming into the game for me, the keys were turnovers. On the road, can the Knicks force the Heat into more turnovers? Try to get extra possessions and all of those things. So the Heat only had 12 turnovers, and the New York Knicks had 16. So there you go. Got killed. Um, Committed 23 fouls to the Heat's 21 fouls. Again, I said we got out rebounded by 9, with 13 offensive to the Heat, 8 for the Knicks only. Shot almost 50% from the field, which was solid, better than the Heat. The Heat only shot 33 from deep. We shot 32 from deep. So that wasn't the real reason. I mean, it was 7 points with 3.5 minutes to go. It was just the turnovers and silly plays, EJ barreling
Yeah,
into the defense like Julius
yeah.
Randle. There was a few times when Barrett stopped short. He knew he would draw the charge, and I've seen some growth from RJ tonight. Definitely want to single him out for having a good game on the road, but despite some errors, only committed 3 turnovers with 24 points on 9 of 16. What did you see from Barrett?
I saw like you, I saw some progress. I mean, there were a couple of plays where you can see him thinking, okay, I don't want to get fall into the same traps again in terms of creating offensive turnovers. There's nothing more frustrating in basketball than offensive turnovers. When the league has changed in the past 20, 30 years. When I first became a basketball fan, players were not actively seeking to take charges in the way that they do today. Taking a charge today has become an art form. There are players that it seems that are specially designated to take charges on almost every team's roster. I mean, our guy would be Jalen Brunson. For the Heat, it would be Kevin Love. And so for a player like RJ, whose primary method of scoring is diving into the lane and trying to find some sort of way to force his way to the basket, having that ability to recognize, okay, I need to be more creative in terms of my handles, to ensure that I'm actually making this offensive effort an actual substantive effort is good. At the same time, RJ is not exempt from some of the silly mistakes that took place tonight
Yep,
that
definitely.
killed, killed rallies, killed surges, bringing the ball up the court, trying to break out of a double team and, throwing over the double team into a turnover, effort in terms of rotations, effort in terms of closing out. Again, Tom Thibodeau will not have tomorrow any lack of film where he can expose and display every player on the court, probably short of Deuce McBride, of
Mm,
just mental lapses. I mean, almost every player tonight had a mental lapse where
mm,
it's like they were
definitely.
glitching out, like they were 2K. Like they tonight was a 2K game where they started
Yep.
glitching out and players were just running around in circles, just not knowing what to do, or they just stood there like waiting for you to like press X or something. Frustrating, frustrating. It's the kind of game, and I told CT I might rant tonight. I feel it coming on. This is the kind of game where
Mm,
people who make fun of Knicks fans and our loyalty and our commitment to being Knicks fans, this is the kind of game where they latch onto it and they're like, you see, this is what you get for being a Knicks fan. I know tomorrow's going to be a difficult date for me because I'm going to think about how frustrating of a game this was. I'm going to think about how frustrating of a loss it was. I'm going to think about what was it that led to so many mental mistakes, and really soul crushing mental mistakes? I don't know. I don't know. This is incredibly difficult, and it's really hard to compliment any player tonight, because of how many mental mistakes there were.
Yeah, yeah. This would be one of those regular season games where we will just rant and throw it in the trash.
Oh
Really,
yeah.
it
Oh
just
yeah.
happens to be coming at a back-breaking time when it was a must-win.
Hmm.
And now you're down 3-0. We know the odds of that. Um, and I said to you this before we came on air. I said, look, hopefully we win game 5 and we have another game in game 6, so that not because I think we're going to win this series. I think there's a very remote chance, but you want to extend the season for multiple reasons. You want to continue these young
Yeah.
players getting experience. You want to see if they can adapt, they can adjust,
Hmm.
uh, they can eliminate some of these mistakes. Are they mentally more stronger? Are they just more inexperienced? Inexperienced mistakes creep in, but also mistakes can creep in because you don't have the ability.
Yeah.
So you want to
Yeah.
you want to get to the root of a lot of these things. We've always been an isolation heavy team. So, like I mentioned before, the Heat are more connected. They don't give up on second, third, fourth efforts. They're always cutting, always, the ball might be bouncing on the rim and the player is still cutting, hoping his player might
Hmm.
grab the rebound and then he has an open dunk. Our players are just standing there ball watching, like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen? Randle's got the ball now. Let me jog up the court. I don't know if he's going to pass it to me or not. Um, I don't really know where to go. And a lot of that is coaching too.
Hmm.
We have our roster has flaws, but our coach has flaws as well. So if people are going to say after this that the Knicks' second round exit is as far as they could go with this coach and this roster, I could say yeah, I understand. Um, I really do, and I think Isaiah Hartenstein gave us some hustle, but ultimately him and Mitch aren't giving us enough offense. If you want to play 4v5, it's it's tough on everyone else when you're not a good shooting team. Um, you know, and the most frustrating thing about tonight, EJ, probably for me, is this. This was one of the more winnable road games, and we didn't have Emmanuel quickly. Like the way this game was played, the fast
Yeah.
pace and the up and down. This
Yeah.
is actually probably a game
Yeah.
where I could have seen Emmanuel quickly thrive. But
Yeah.
the disappointing thing is he wasn't here.
I, I get like, and I know Heat fans are loving this, but it is. It's
Mm.
it's an incredibly frustrating game because it was there. This was the game that was you could have conceivably won. Um,
Yeah.
when we look at game three played out in a way where it just seemed as if, by the time we got to the middle of the fourth quarter, it was so apparent that there was no way to win game three that it was like, okay, let's just call it a game and let's prepare for game four. But you can't go this close, especially on the road. You can't be this close to a game four win, and because of silly mental mistakes, you don't win the game. And the other reason why this is really frustrating, this wasn't a playoff. We lost because of playoff Jimmy. We didn't lose because of Jimmy Butler tonight, and that is incredibly maddening. If Jimmy Butler went for 40 and 8, or a 56-point game, that would be one thing. But this was not an all world, you know, you tell your grandkids about you were watching the game, or you make up the fact that you were at the game and you saw Jimmy Butler go for 61. It wasn't that kind of game. If anything, this was more of a pedestrian kind of basic Jimmy Butler game. And to not be able to close it out is incredibly maddening. And um, the thing that keeps me from going off the ledge is that I just remember that this Knicks team is ahead of schedule. In as much as this loss is frustrating, in as much as this loss is disappointing, in as much as we're already thinking about the off season and we're thinking about who's going to be traded for whom, and we start thinking about what machinations and what trade designs we can construct, and there'll be plenty of time for that. But the saving grace is that the Knicks are ahead of schedule. There are very few people who will be honest who predicted the Knicks would be here. And
Yeah,
this season has already been a positive step. Obviously, the season's not over. There's still a game five for us to see about. But yes, this loss is frustrating. But the thing I
yeah,
have to remember is, again, the Knicks are not supposed to be here. The Knicks are not supposed to be here.
yeah. Yeah, it's tough to look that far ahead yet with the season still here, but
Yeah.
also reflective of what got us here, and evaluate. I keep saying the playoffs were a great way for us to get this far. We've been able to fast track some things, We fast track to see whether Obi Toppin is where we, might think he might be right now. And the playoffs have shown to be a bit too big for him.
Mm,
Julius Randle, the same. Um, Mitch showed some dominance in a particular type of matchup, which is like, okay, hey, we could continue to keep him around. He's a very very effective player in certain matchups, but in other matchups, inexperienced, not so much. Um, Emmanuel quickly disappointed in the playoffs.
mm,
Look, Quentin Grimes had a solid performance. Definitely his assignment on Jimmy Butler. I think he defended him as well as he could have, as well as I would expect, given that it was a tall task. But yeah, in terms of my point, it's a lot of evaluation going on.
yeah.
The thing that stinks the most for me is there was a clear pathway to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Although we were ahead of schedule, sometimes these moments in time don't present themselves very often,
Hmm, hmm,
and you've got to go back to the drawing board. You've got to improve your roster. You've got to look at your coach. You've got to look at a lot of things. But we are here in this moment. We had a chance. We had a very good opportunity after the Cavs series to step up and give this series, at least take it 7. We
yeah.
lost game 1, which was the most disappointing thing, and now you're left trying to win games on the road, which our leaders just aren't. They're not. They're few and far between. You know, um, Even Jalen Brunson with a flawed roster, he's torn. You could see EJ. He's torn
Yeah.
whether should I try to go isolation or should I try to pass the ball. And I got to give credit to Gabe Vincent and the Heat also, the way they defended Brunson tonight, picking him up full court. That was kind of sickening for me why Thibs didn't try to adjust at all. And I see like RJ saying like, should I bring the ball up or should I not? Like, just do it. Just bring the ball up. You could see he's been hounded, and why it takes these guys that long to recognize what's going on is a blight on everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it really well, and I think it's not time for us to do the autopsy of the next season yet, but
Yeah,
it's starting to lend itself to some of these questions. Um,
yeah,
like I think that I'm really gonna get some slack for this one. So I'm really gonna get some flack rather, for lack is the right word. Um,
yeah,
is it time to question Randall and the playoffs? I don't know.
yeah.
Um, like that's going to
Absolutely.
be a conversation. Throughout the course of this game, I was just thinking about, do we need that wing that is an offensive microwave that is able to just create shots and offload some of the pressure off of a Jalen Brunson? Because it just felt as if Jalen Brunson wasn't cooking, it just seemed as if there was just nothing that we could do to counter to create pressure on Miami's defense. It just felt it just felt many times tonight Miami's defense really worked hard, but they worked harder than they had to, and that to me was an indictment. Um, that it felt like they were working harder than they actually had to because there were so many mental lapses, and there were just so many times where although we had a great shooting percentage, it just never felt as if for the shooting percentage we had, that we scored in a way that really threatened Miami's ability to win this game. And that just makes no sense to me. But somehow we managed to do it.
Man, yeah, I love getting your thoughts on this, and
Thanks,
some
bro.
quotes from Randle on the officiating tonight and on fouling out. So Randle said, as far as officiating, that's one of the toughest games I've been a part of. Usually the physicality in the playoffs is up, which I kind of agree with him there. He says, I don't know, I had 6 fouls and I think maybe 4 or 5 were offensive. That's never happened in my career. That's tough. So Julius Randle on, trying to adjust to that. Of course, he's saying certain things about the rebounding as well. He said, I don't know, maybe the Heat just wanted it more, which was clear. Tom Thibodeau says a lot of those rebounds were deep, were long shots and deep rebounds that went over our head. So, I mean, tonight I don't really blame those rebounding on not winning this game. It was earlier. There
Mm,
were so many earlier times when we were making a run, EJ, and a defensive silly foul, like bailing a dude out with 1 second left.
Quentin
Silly things
Brunson.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Julius Randle on the break, on a 2-on-1 break, and decides to just meander
Yeah.
and run into Kevin Love instead of pass it to the guy on the wing. Um, is there any type of back-breaking plays that stick out to you more than others tonight?
Yeah, I got it. We have what could amount to a game changing 5, 6, or plausibly even a 7-point play after Jalen Brunson is
Yeah.
able to draw the foul on, I believe, Caleb Martin. And that play is upgraded to a flagrant one. The inability for us to turn that into a 5, 6, or even 7-point play. It was indicative of our inability to capitalize on opportunities. And as Knicks fans, we're gonna harp on some of the bad calls that didn't go our way. Listen, I have to be rational. I have to be objective. There were a couple of calls that didn't go Miami's way either.
Mm.
But when you have the opportunities to really stem the tide and to really turn the tide in terms of where it's going, we had several of those moments where we just didn't make smart plays, or we just didn't execute in a way to really secure the momentum. And it was there. It was there for the taking, and we just did not do it.
You said it. Um, Another issue tonight was fast break points. A key for me, fam, on the road was to get easier buckets. Tonight was that quintessential half court game. We were only able to manufacture 7 fast break points to the Heat's 9, but yet we managed to produce a little bit better in the half court. But without Quickly, without Toppin playing well, follies on the break, like Randle barraging in, Barrett barraging in. Yeah, we weren't able to get any kind of fast break points. And like I said, you cannot afford to turn the ball over 16 times on the road if you're trying to win a ball game, on the road. But I look at the score, 101 to 109. The Heat didn't shoot a great percentage, 33% from deep. But what they did is they hit timely shots. They hit those shots to end our run, and they were back breaking at the right times. And I think the Knicks just seemed to help the Heat tonight by making a folly. Um, I got one for you, man. It
Hit me.
was literally a, it was literally a Benny Hill show with
Oh
ba- with Barrett and Grimes under the rim,
my
and
gosh.
the Heat player airballs it. It's about to go out of bounds, and for some reason they touch it. Do you do you remember that?
Listen, that's you want to see my reaction to that play?
What was it? Did you swear? Did you swear once
No,
watching this game?
because no, because I've been a Knicks fan long enough to like I've seen it all. I've seen it all. So um,
Mm,
that's just one of those plays where who I thought of in that moment. I thought of Clyde
wow.
because Clyde has seen Clyde Frazier has seen some of the Knicks' best basketball as being part of two championship teams. He saw the '90s teams. There's the classic '99 April Fool's joke where he comes out of retirement and Scott Brooks is cut. Um, but what amazes me about Clyde too, he's seen some really bad Knicks basketball, and I know he
Oh
has to
yeah.
sometimes just say to himself, "Man, you guys are idiots. You guys are just bumbling idiots." Because like I can only imagine Clyde watching this, and saying, just tell your man you're gonna get the ball. Like that's a communicate. That's communication. That's basketball. Like know your
Yeah.
just tell your man like I got it, and to not have the ability to let your man know I got the rebound. That's the epitome of silly, stupid, sloppy play. And I know that there are Heat fans who are like, like, oh, the Knicks fans, blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. But that's really about what makes a good basketball team a good basketball team. So I'll
Yep.
compliment the Heat for their execution, you
Yeah.
know, but at the same time, that play was the epitome of just bad play. Like you have to talk. You have to talk in basketball. You have to talk. You have to
Yep.
talk. You have to talk. And that was just a moment where it's like, really? Not only did
Yeah.
you not see one another, but
Yep.
you weren't communicating with one another. So that wasn't a,
Not.
so the Benny Hill song, yeah,
Yeah, man. Like it's just comical, and they'll learn
yeah,
from that, which is what we speak of. We're ahead of schedule. We're just chopping up the disappointment of ultimately this season coming closer to an end and ending poorly, on a bad note in terms of the vibes building up, from beating Cleveland. But I will say again, the playoffs are about matchups, and we ran into a poor matchup because the Heat are well connected. They're experienced. I don't want to keep hearing dudes say these players are undrafted and Kyle Lowry's old and all of that. It makes no difference in the playoffs. It's team versus team, who executes better, who makes better adjustments, who's coached better, and who has more stars as well.
yeah,
And it's no shame for the Knicks to go down because the Heat have more stars at the end of the
yeah,
day. Like Kyle Lowry is stepping up and showing that he's looking like he was once a star. Kevin Love fitting into a great role. Jimmy Butler and Bam, the Knicks, Randle not stepping up, and you know, at times Barrett and Mitch and these other players aren't matching that level. Um, and Jalen Brunson just can't do it all by himself, and he
yeah,
hasn't had a great series necessarily. He played obviously better against the Cavs, um, but yeah, ultimately, man, our roster flaws are coming home. But now we can see that. Now we can see we need more shooting at the wing.
yeah,
We need a 5 man that can actually play some offense. And we'll talk about it. We'll dissect the season. But there are players out there like Christian Wood, Brook Lopez is going to be available possibly. Um, yeah, this team would look very different with a big man who can shoot. But we'll talk about it more. But yeah, keys for Game 5. I want to get your thoughts on this. Some adjustments. It's all about the future for me. If we're going to go down, let's go down in these next 2 games, possibly EJ featuring some of these other guys. So my keys are: I like what I saw from Barrett. Give him more reps on the ball. Give him more confidence. Let him isolate on Duncan Robinson or Kyle Lowry or someone who's a smaller guy. Keep finding Quentin Grimes. How many shots did Grimes get tonight? Grimes shot 3 of 8 and 3 of 7 from deep. Yeah, at least he stretched the floor a little bit. Get him some looks, and of course at MSG, fan play faster, move the ball, try to force some more turnovers on the road. But yeah, feature RJ and Grimes more in Game 5. What are you hoping to see in a Game 5?
I want the I'm going to focus on two or three things. The first one is what's the key in any relationship? Communication, 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 communication. I want to see
Facts.
Knicks players communicating. Um, so that's the first key to me. The second key to me is being mentally present every single moment of every single play. I don't want to see the Knicks game five at home, literally a do or die game. Every game now, the rest of the series is a do or die game. You can't take plays off. You can't hope and pray that a ref is going to bail you out. You can't whine for 60 seconds, 75 seconds, 90 seconds to a referee for a missed call or a call that didn't go your way. Those 65 seconds, those 75 seconds, those 95 seconds have to all go into you visualizing and preparing for the next play, for you anticipating what moves are going to take place, for you willing yourself and prepping yourself to make the cuts that you need the cuts that you need to make, for you to will yourself to actually get over screens, not to like fake try to get over screens, but to bowl your way over the top of screens and make sure that you are applying the defensive pressure to every single Heat player who touches the ball. And last but not least, play with pride. Play with pride. Um, you know, there's a part of this where even if the Knicks go down in game five, you want to assure that the Heat feel that they played a competent, not a plucky, but a competent Knicks squad. So play with the pride of, Clyde Frazier. Play with the pride of Earl Monroe. Play with the pride of the captain who just recently passed away, Willis Reed. Play with the pride of the '90s Knicks. Play with the pride of Patrick Ewing. Play with the pride of John Starks. Play with the pride of, Anthony or the late great Anthony Mason. Play with the pride of which. Listen, Charles Oakley has been retired for almost 20 years and he's still fighting. So I don't know, some of you guys caught that or you didn't catch that. Play with that pride. Play with the pride of the orange and the
And
blue.
blue.
Even if you go down, play with pride, play with intelligence, and communicate.
No, that's great points, man. We need to see it. Um, yeah, I still feel good about winning a game five and that them coming out and showing that fight and then having one more crack on the road, one more crack. But it's just, yeah, our very raw thoughts of tonight and our chances to win game four are disappointing. Um, because, yeah, the Heat did not play a great game. We unfortunately just were not better than them tonight. And I keep going back to losing game one, you don't just lose game and upon game, you lose a series, and you lose a series by losing game one, giving up home court. Also, now in terms of the rebounding, our strengths didn't come through tonight. Um, but in terms of the playoffs, again, you don't have time to figure things out. So keep it simple, stupid. For me, EJ, move the ball, run with pace, defend well. Um, and I want to get your thoughts on the defense. Did you feel like our defense was at times more disciplined in terms of like guarding Jimmy Butler one on one? I know we didn't guard Bam very well, but in terms of at times I thought like Quentin Grimes' one on one defense, the switching was better. Deuce McBride was good when he came in. So how did you see the defense?
No, I think you're right, bro. I mean, a lot of what you said, particularly because if we were to point to this not being a quote unquote Jimmy Butler game or a playoff Jimmy game, by the way, which is one of the funniest nicknames in basketball, playoff Jimmy, and that's just so funny to me. Um, but he didn't have that kind of game, and in part that may have been attributed to his not necessarily having the best of games, but that also has to be attributed in part to the Knicks defense. So, you have to give credit where credit is due. Adding the element of Quentin Grimes was really important, in particular because Josh Hart struggled with fouls almost all game long. So, the defensive there was impressive. However, it's frustrating because even with that defensive effort, we still weren't able to overcome and surmount the obstacle, which was the Knicks, which was the Heat lead. So
Yeah.
just frustrating all around.
Yeah, there was a lack of trust, I would say, as well. There'll be like, for instance, there'll be a time when one guy held up his end and guarded his man solid, but then when he needed help, no one was
Yeah,
there, or,
yeah.
not making the right rotation at the right time. But let me say this, the discipline on the pump fakes was disgusting tonight. Just flying by guys for no reason. Um, just gave people like, I mean, Kyle Lowry, that's how savvy he is. There were a time when Jalen Brunson in that corner had that big shot, I think, to make it like 5 or 6, maybe even cut it to 4 with about 5 minutes remaining in the corner, and he rushed the three. Like, his guy was clearly flying by. That, if Kyle Lowry can do that, just pump fake, that would have been a perfect time for him to just take his time and pump fake. But that's the difference, The game is always up here as well.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Kyle Lowry has been to the NBA Finals and Eastern Conference Finals numerous times, and you don't just lose that experience. It stays with you. When someone else gave you the business, you learn from that. So hopefully our players can learn a trick or two. Danny is in the house. Salute. I'm very disappointed in today's game. Terrible D. No rebounds. Mitch looks lost. He's useless.
Wow. Ooh.
Poor, yeah, poor game from Mitch tonight. Poor game from Randle. Poor game from Obi. Poor game from Hartenstein. Tonight I give a pass to McBride, Hart, Grimes, Barrett, and of course Brunson. Do you agree with that? Is there any? Am I being too generous or?
No, I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. This is just poor. It was just poor.
Yeah.
Just really
Yeah.
poor, with few exceptions. Yeah.
Yeah. Poor and frustrating, on the road. Now I know what you said you wanted to see in Game 5. So, is there any predictions before we wrap it up in terms of, do you expect us to take care of Game 5? Do you think it's a 50-50? Do you think there's still a small glimmer of hope? Um, yeah, how do you see this story ending?
Um, it's really hard to tell. I do think first team to 90 wins. I think that's the big goal. If Julius Randle can salvage one amazing playoff game this first quarter of Game 5, I do think that will. I'll make this prediction. If Julius Randle scores 11 or more points in the first quarter of Game 5, we'll win. I think that's been one of the more difficult elements of this playoff run is that he hasn't necessarily had that breakout, standout playoff game. And in part, we don't know how badly that ankle is hurting. We don't know. But at the same time, um, I trust that Jalen Brunson is going to make a good showing of it. And I'm hoping
Yep.
that this is a competitive game.
Yeah, man. Likewise, me too. And as we wrap it up, there's a few quotes from Brunson, obviously on screen saying we're on the brink of elimination. No matter what you do, just keep your confidence. And Brunson on the Knicks mindset heading into Game 5, one at a time. Barrett also says, get a win back home. That's it. Just get a win back home. That's it. So, yeah, can these players keep some confidence? Let's see. I would love us to extend the series. Not that I expect us to be victorious, but like I said, if we can have 2 more playoff games, that's going to be big. And I think this season ending at home would be a huge disappointment versus, prolonging to a Game 6. And, you know, Game 6, the home team does get nervous at times. We stay in it like we did tonight. If we do get to a Game 6, EJ, you know, there might be some follies and inexperience that creeps in on the Miami side. So, you know, we've seen this before. Teams have come back, obviously a lot better teams, but game at a time, like you said, play with some pride,
Yeah.
and that's it. You know, don't let the season end at home. You know, thoughts?
Yeah. You know, Knicks fans, at least we get to see the Knicks one more time, at least one more time in the Garden on
Mm.
Wednesday night, and this will be an opportunity for us to really think about the growth and the development of the team. We have some hard decisions to make, you know, over the course of the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. But Game 5 should be interesting. Um, I do hope that some home cooking, the plane ride back to New York City will help. Sleeping in everyone's own bed will help. Um, I'm just looking forward to Game 5. That's all I can say.
Yep, I echo those thoughts, man. Let's get back to MSG. Have our best game, our best performance. Let's win convincingly, and take care of the rest after that. But this is CTEJ getting ready to wrap this thing up. Appreciate everyone locking in, watching us, supporting us, smashing that like button tonight, even if you're raging, right? And another game at MSG, right? We'll have plenty of time to do that big autopsy on the season, but right now it's play with pride and prolong this series. Take it to the Heat in Game 5, right? Frustrating, disappointing night, right? Knicks fans, give us your thoughts in the comments section. Always respond and create this dialogue. As Knicks Nation, we're the best fan base in the biz. And some more ball to chop up. Game 5 on on Wednesday. See you then. Peace.